Shana Tova. Preparing for the High Holy Days. Someone asked me once, how long does it take you to prepare for your sermons? My answer is 365 days. I already have started thinking about what I might talk about next year. It is an interesting thing to be a rabbi of a community that has a regular experience and then a High Holy Day experience, and how do we balance those? And one of the ways I do it is I try and ask a different question each day for each sermon. And today I knew I wanted my question to be, as I mentioned before, what are we doing here? I mean, it's not easy. There's a tremendous amount of work. There is resources that even just setting up the chairs took hours. We had a whole committee of people who put the little questions we came up with on the back of chairs. Why do we do all of that? And I had a slew of ideas running through my head, and it coalesced on the first day of religious school. The first day of religious school, our new principal, Miriam Hertzon, has set up a big board as soon as you walk in that says Hakarat HaTov, which means gratitude. And each kid began the year by writing on a little yellow piece of paper what they were grateful for. And they stapled the paper, and the whole board is full with gratitude. Already, all right, feeling great, so I decided to read them. And there is, I love my family, I'm grateful for my parents, I'm grateful for my mom and dad, I'm grateful for my mom, I'm grateful for my mom, I'm grateful for my mom, I'm grateful for my mom. And I, like you, perhaps noticed that one person never got a solo shout out. And perhaps I was feeling sensitive because the night before I'd come home just in time for Hadar's bedtime, and we read books and then sit with her for a minute, and I got in bed with her and we were nose to nose, and she gets real close and she says, "I want mommy to sit with me." And I was like, "Me too, kid, me too." It's because, of course, she loves her mother, and her mother makes her feel safe and comfortable. And I realized that, in fact, the high holidays are pointing us towards mothers. Now, I should take one moment to say, not every mother makes their children feel safe and comfortable. But very often, for many of us, we turn to our mothers to feel whole, to feel seen, to feel protected, to feel like someone's on our side. And it's not an accident that subtly throughout the High Holy Days, it is the story of mothers that is present. If you had asked anyone on the street who are the main characters of the High Holidays, you might hear Moses or Abraham. It is the rabbis, the men who lead and progress the story. That's exactly right. Thank you. No! That was hard to time, and let me tell you. It is, in fact, the mothers who come up again and again, and three mothers in particular, whose stories I want to tell you, and then I want to pull out what we can learn from them about what we're doing here. And I'm going to go in reverse chronological order, the stories of Hannah, of Hagar, and of Sarah. Hannah is the Haftarah yesterday. Hannah is a woman who lives in the post-Moses, pre-nation of Israel era. And she is one of two wives of this man, and the other wife keeps having kids, kid after kid after kid after kid, and she's not one of those supportive sister wives. She lets her know, it's funny, I'm just pregnant again. And she's getting more and more anxious. Hannah is feeling the pressure and wondering what her purpose is in life. And so on their pilgrimage to the festival in Jerusalem, Hannah looks up, sneaks away and goes to the Holy of Holies and has her own prayer. In the shadows at night, tears stream down her face, and she says, "Please, God, I'll dedicate my child to your service, but please, God, let me become a mother." And the high priest walks in at that moment, and he sees a woman in the dark. The words are not coming out of her mouth, just her lips are moving, and he assumes she's drunk. and he tears her apart. How dare you come into the Holy of Holies? Woman, you cannot do that drunk. And Hannah looks up, and you imagine the light catches, and suddenly he sees the tears streaming down her face, and she says, please, high priest, I'm just praying. High priest is so taken aback, both at his wrongness and at the sincerity of her prayer, that he says, may your prayers be answered. And indeed, 9 months later, there is a new baby named Shmuel. Shmuel becomes the second greatest prophet our people have ever known. Only after Moses does he rank in importance, and it's because Hannah prayed. In fact, not only do we read her story on the first day of Rosh Hashanah as the Haftarah, the rabbis tell us that every time we pray, every time we open our mouth, we should be trying to emulate Hannah and pour out our souls. Yes. The second story is Hagar. Hagar is really a tragic character. Abraham and Sarah are married a long time. They're getting old, and Sarah knows that it's Abraham's job to bring the message of monotheism, to build a future of Lador Vador, generation to generation, and they have no second generation. So Sarah, in what has to be the worst plan of all times, says, why don't you sleep with my handmaid Hagar? And Abraham, in what has to be the dumbest husband move of all time, says, sure. Ishmael is born, and shockingly, Sarah and Hagar stop getting along. Then the miracle God always promised happens. Isaac arrives, and Sarah cannot bear for Isaac and Ishmael to be together. And Sarah asks Abraham, please send away Hagar and Ishmael. And God says, Sarah's right, you should do it. And Hagar is given a day's food and a day's water, and she heads off into the wilderness with her child on her back. Food runs out, water runs out. And Hagar lays her son down and looks away. She calls out to God and says, I can't face the death of my child. And God says, look up. I have heard the screams, the cries of your child. Look to the side, and there, lo and behold, is fresh water. And that becomes the turning point, and Ishmael becomes the leader not just of one, but of 12 separate nations. He grows up strong and becomes his own force in the Middle East. Third story is Sarah. We read Hagar's story yesterday during our Torah reading. The third story about Sarah, this story we don't read because it is a midrash. It is a rabbinic story to fill out what was missing from our Torah reading today. Our Torah reading has Abraham and Isaac walking for 3 days, walking up a mountain. Abraham binds Isaac, lifts the knife, and God says, no, you don't have to sacrifice your child. But the rabbis imagine a tempting angel. This tempting angel's job it is to stop Abraham from having faith and completing God's mission. And he tries everything he can think of. And at last, when he fails, he rushes to Sarah's side. He says to Sarah, Abraham is sacrificing your son Isaac. And she calls out 3 times. She screams out 3 times in agony. And that's the moment she passes. Those 3 cries, rabbis tell us, are the sound of shivarim, the sound of the shofar 3 times calling out. They mimic Sarah's agony. So these 3 women, these 3 mothers, their story, their pain, their emotions, they intertwine and lift up our high holy days, and they tell us exactly how to be present for the day of judgment, the day in which we pass before God, try and find meaning. The first lesson they teach us is the opposite of how we present. We tell you exactly when to come in. We present a schedule and tell you where to sit. You have to wear certain clothing, be on the right page, stand when I tell you to, sit when I tell you not to. Our team has the honors moving up and down better than the Manhattan subway on schedule. And all of that creates a formality that hides away the reality of what we need to do, which is to open our hearts and be present. To break open the rules of society and to let ourselves feel. All of the things we do today could be the things that prevent us from feeling, or if we allow them, we let the speeches and the prayers and the melody and the music and the community, they can be the thing that break open the walls of our heart and let us feel our deepest and most difficult, most serious feelings. If that were all, it would be enough. Too much of our lives are spent denying the parts of ourselves, pretending that we're okay. There is a meme that I often think of. There is a dog from an old cartoon sitting in a house that's completely on fire, and the dog is drinking a cup of tea saying, "This is fine." These women teach us that we're meant to feel the fire, we're meant to feel the flames, and not hide from them. The second job, to do something with those feelings. To let them mean more than just the static existence of hormones and chemicals in our body, but to challenge us to do more. Each of those women didn't just pour out their hearts. Each of those women made something happen. And they did something particularly remarkable. Their actions didn't just make the next day happen. Their immediate needs were met. But because of them, the greater Jewish story moved forward. Hannah, all she wanted to do was become a mother, but because of her, Shmuel was born, and the first Jewish nation, all the 12 tribes were united because of Shmuel's leadership. Hagar, all she needed was water, but because of her, the story of her child advanced, and 12 nations were born. Sarah cried out in agony, and in her loss, Isaac finds the courage to become the next patriarch. Less of a funny moment, but I'll take it. The challenge for us today is to ask ourselves, what moves us most deeply? What keeps us up at night? What puts us in agony? And then to wake up the next morning and say, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to do something today so that in a generation, in 2, in 3 generations, the Jewish story, my story, continues? The last is something so beautiful and so obvious the second you know it, but likely something you never thought about. One of the challenges of looking to the men in our stories, they're fantastic leaders. We're lucky to have them. But one of the challenges is we aren't them. Not just because we're not as great as them, though certainly I would suspect we're not, but they have something we do not. God comes to Abraham and says, "Go for yourself on a journey to the land that I will show you. Take your son, your only son." God tells Abraham, not in vague messages, but in explicit will, what to do. God tells Moses, "I have heard the call of your people. Return and tell Pharaoh, let my people go." I don't know what your experience of God is, but I don't get explicit messages. In fact, if you think God is telling you something, we should talk. Rather, at best, when things work the absolute best, what I get is a sense that I'm doing something right, a sense of purpose and connection. The women in these stories, Hannah, Hagar, and Sarah, not once Does God tell them, go here, do this? Instead, they let their passion, they let their feelings, they let what matters most to them guide them, and they do their absolute best. I don't know about you, but I think that describes all of us. These women are here and present on this high holy days to tell us that it might feel like only Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob get to carry on the mission of the Jewish people. But in fact, it is those of us who don't get to hear the direct message. We are the ones who call out most authentically. These women are all of us. They were surrounded in a world where other people seem to know what's going on, where other people's stories seem to be going exactly the way they're supposed to, and they were lost and unsure. They remind us that it is exactly who and where we're supposed to be, and it is by crying out to God that we might figure out where to put our next step. This Rosh Hashanah, I wish us the chance to let these three stories in our hearts. Let these three women, these three mothers guide us to feel our deepest and scariest feelings. To let those feelings guide us to action that both serves our needs for today but looks to the distant future. And I hope we remember that none of us, not one of us, knows what we're doing. The best we can do is channel these mothers, put one foot in front of the other, and try and feel what God might want of us. This Rosh Hashanah, what we are doing here is asking the question, who am I and what can I do? Shana Tova.